All right. Alafia, Mandala, Baby Fahudier, it's your favorite warrior, Blak Pantha, back in the building. You see us, we both in our libraries right now. It's a great shot right there. What's up?
Yes, sir.
So, we're doing our thing, man. How you doing, brother? James Morgan, what's going on, bro?
Peace, good brother. I am black in America, and that is an emotional state.
Indeed it is, brother. Let me get my.
But I'm also happy to be here, and thank you to you and your audience for having me. I do want to apologize for the background. Hopefully, it doesn't look too disheveled, but I'm coming to you all live from the. Normally I don't tell folks where I'm at in the moment, but I'm coming to y'all live from the African American Civil War Museum here in Washington, D.C. We are currently in the process of moving into a bigger space, the historic Grimkey School here in D.C. on Vermont Avenue. So, if y'all see some things, or maybe even see somebody come behind me or something like that, I do apologize ahead of time. But we are in the midst of, we're actually a Black-owned and operated organization that is growing. Like I said, we're actually moving into a new building, a much bigger one. And so we're very thankful to the ancestors for that blessing.
Man, that's great stuff, man. That's great stuff to hear, bro. See, this the quality of research, man. That's something that me and you share, and I'm glad to have you on the program, bro. Been wanting to do this for a minute. Just getting caught up in life's everyday stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But now we got you here. Thank you all for tuning in. I usually build on Saturdays, so thank you for tuning in. Let me set up my Facebook thing as well, because people be commenting on Facebook and I don't see it. Maybe get mad. So let me.
Can you send me a public link as well if I want to share it out?
Absolutely.
Before you start.
Absolutely, brother. So let me. Oh no, that's the other one. Let me do that real quick. How's your Saturday going, brother?
Oh man, brother, I am like I said, man, just living life. We got work to do down here at the museum today. I'm currently in the midst of grad school, as you know, at Morgan State University. And so if anyone's is wondering, as far as I'm concerned, that school was named after one of my ancestors. And yes, I am looking for my reparations check, but I am thankful that a brother is there on a full teaching fellowship. That means I'm, they took care of my tuition. So that's a down payment.
You right where you need to be then. Right where you need to be.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All the way where you need to be.
Yes, sir. Yeah. When I will never forget when I got that email. I was laying on my couch. It was a Sunday, and my little Apple Watch vibrated, and all I saw was, "We want you to teach, and tuition is covered." And I said, "Where do I sign?"
That's all you got. That's all you got to see, baby. That's all you got to see. Yeah. Let's shout out some people in the chat. Brother Donnie Williams, appreciate that. Brother Omar Reed, Black African Power, right back to you. Jama Mboka, to Brother Sean, Jerry Jeff for tuning in. Alafia She Lafia Ni, ETM Hotep. Brother Kofi, Jama Hawal Mboka, Jerry Jeff to you as well. But before we get into this interview, we gotta get into.
You looking at it, you Black King. Astro protect, blast of attack, pass your neck with the shit to leave a rapper erect from the back of a black Acura. Bullet ricocheted and it's waved and it passed through your pecs. The assassin wet. All y'all know y'all don't have to go. Sawed off shoddy, make you potty, probably call the law. Me no gangster, I'm no tough, got me child of the most high. I get on the mic and you go, bye-bye. Devil don't test me, I throw shrapnel where your chest be. Shooting our family down in the streets. Fuck the police, they ain't marching for me. Pull up, not that Rari, I ain't bad yet. I pull up out that 85% of mass set. I put this on God, bad black is so hard. Bitch, I'm going back to Harlem in my West African garb.
Man, that's my joint, boy. Shouts out to brother 93 Ava Rice, Fortune Balese for that track, man. Y'all can actually go get his joint on all streaming platforms, man. I believe it's called Fireproof EP. So y'all go cop that, man. Shirts available. Family Connect Apparel, new independent African academy. We are building a community. So cop the shirts at familyconnectapparel.com. Beautiful lessons about Kimoyo, my brother Kofi Piesie, who wrote this book about African spirituality. So pick that up, man. It's worth the read. I've read it. It's worth it. Spears of the Mossi Volume 4. Kofi Piesie research team. Check that out at your earliest convenience as well. And what SARS-CoV-2 taught me by Brother Sean Iniheret. So pick that up as well so you can be more informed about the virus that is making more copies of itself. And we got a new independent African Academy hoodie, also at familyconnectapparel.com. All right, brother. Now that all the advertisement is out of the way, can you introduce yourself to the people?
Sure. My name is James R. Morgan III. I am originally from New Jersey. I'm a graduate from Howard University, and I'm currently enrolled at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland, where I'm studying Africana history, Africana studies. I also work there as a graduate research assistant, so I'm dealing with undergraduates as well. We just finished up our first semester there at Morgan State. I am a researcher, a writer, an author. I serve as the Worshipful Grand Historian and Archivist of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia, where the Honorable Quincy G. Gant is our Most Worshipful Grand Master. I am a past master of Corinthian Lodge number 18 here in DC as well. I mean, what else you want to know? I'm a genealogist. I'm an author, of the book The Lost Empire, Black Freemasonry in the Old West, which has won three pretty important awards, I think, as well. And as Malcolm X would say, before all of those things, I'm an African man, and I'm proud of it. And I'm just really happy to be here. I'm also a Virgo. I like long walks on the beach.
That boy's silly, man. This is the book that he talking about, family. Lost Empire, Freemasonry in the Old West. We will be talking about this book today. So just putting it out there. But y'all just heard this brother, man. He's on the grand level in his district for District of Columbia. The brother is immersed in the study of Freemasonry. So often when we talk about Freemasonry, the spooky stuff comes out, the conspiracy theories comes out, and people call Freemasons, derogatory things, especially Black Freemasons. So I wanted to bring a Black Freemason on the show, that has published books on the subject, wrote articles on the subject, to really get that perspective on what the Black Freemason experience is. And I don't hide my hand either. Been a brother of the craft, as we say, since 2010. Past high priest, past thrice illustrious master, past intimate commander of the Knights Templar. Just got a call today about me possibly being a CIC now.
Uh-oh. Well, if you see, I was trying to be humble, but if you're gonna pull out all your stuff, I'm also a past commander in chief. So welcome to the club. If you're gonna pull out all your stuff, and I'm currently excellent king of Mount Vernon, chapter number 1 of Royal Archery.
I didn't know you did. Okay.
Yeah. I was trying to be humble with it.
And recently, for those of you that are on my Facebook and Instagram, they know that I have been elevated to the rank of 33rd degree Mason, which is the last degree in Prince Hall Freemasonry. So you got two brothers here that know what they're talking about. You ain't getting no YouTube half-baked, read couple books, want to give you an opinion about what they think. No, this is what we know. This is what we have lived as far as, a decade or more of our lives. And that's the perspective of where we're going to be coming from today.
Sure. And it's funny, we both got raised in 2010. So we're gonna have to do this. Yeah. We're gonna look at the numbers and the astrology on what was that about? What was going on in 2010?
All right, bro. Start the people off. What is Freemasonry in your estimation?
Sure. So Freemasonry is it's a couple of things. The common corporate line is that it's a system of morality veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols, which you can find that online anywhere. For me, Freemasonry is a philosophy. It is of a way of being. It's not a religion. I want to be very clear about that. Freemasonry is not a religion, although it can be religious in nature. But it's a philosophy on how one interacts with the world around him, with other creatures, other human beings, as well as nature. I've oftentimes ascribed to kind of a synthesis between spirituality, philosophy, and science as well. Oftentimes there's this battle in society about science versus religion and whatnot. And in my view, Freemasons are taught not to get into that fight because we see spirituality as a science. We see the science behind spirituality, so to speak. And so that's why we use terminology like in Masonry, we don't, as you know, brother, we don't require anyone to have a particular religious belief, but we do look to them to have some type of spiritual foundation and some type of belief in a higher power. And so there's a universal term that we use. We say the grand architect of the universe. Well, what is an architect? An architect is someone who understands the principles of mathematics and science and geometry and all these things. And we know geometry is very sacred in Freemasonry. And that person then takes that philosophy and builds the world around them. That's what the grand architect did in our understanding. Regardless of what religious system you come out of, we understand there's certain principles, and that the supreme being, however you refer to him, her, them, whatever, however you want to say it, took those principles and crafted the world as we know it, crafted the universe as we know it. Okay. And so as Masons, we're taught to understand that there's a relationship between us as individuals, individual human beings, as a collective humanity, and the supreme being. Okay. And so when you think about, when you go into, for those who are biblically inclined, those who you go into, I think it's Acts, if I'm not mistaken, I want to say the 10th chapter, 22nd verse, if I'm not mistaken, but there's a verse in there where Jesus says that, know ye not that ye are God's children of the Most High. And he's actually quoting from the Old Testament. And I know it's in Acts. I might have got the chapter wrong, but I know it's in Acts. When you think about that type of a teaching, it's trying to tell you something. What it's telling you is that you are cut from the same cloth of, you are a part of that essence of the one, of the end all be all, so to speak. And so Freemasonry teaches and promotes that. Now, that's on a philosophical, I started you off kind of high, but let's get it down to a very practical level. As an organization, Freemasonry or Masonic Grand Lodges exist throughout the world and are interconnected by their history, by their practices, as far as practicing a system of degrees of initiation. And when a man becomes a Mason, and there are groups out there that practice feminine or co-Masonry, we in Prince Hall Masonry do not practice that, but there are groups that do. When one becomes a Mason, they are bound to certain oaths and obligations on how they would treat each other, how they would treat the family members of each other and the world around them, which is, there's nothing, a lot of times people, like you said, get into conspiracy theories and stuff, but really it's about pledging that you're going to be a good person and actually living that and being accountable for that, not to me, you see what I'm saying, not to you, but to yourself and to the God of your understanding. Because and I'll just finish with this: no one can beat you up worse than your own conscience. You know,
Right.
so when you take that obligation and you say, hey, look, I promise I won't do this and I won't do this and I won't do that. You're not taking it to me or you're taking that to the God of your understanding. Right. So if you do transgress, now you got to figure that out. If you're really a good person, if you're not a good person,
between you and your culture,
exactly. Yep. So you know, it's a philosophical fraternity. It's a lot of fun, a lot of work. It's a business. There's a lot of aspects to it, but that's probably the simplest way I can kind of sum it up for anyone who's new to this discussion.
So, brother, you mentioned in some of your work and some of your prior interviews about Black Freemasonry and no government funding. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So Prince Hall Masonry, which for those who don't know, Prince Hall was a free Black man who lived in and around the Boston area during the American Revolutionary War period. He was an abolitionist, an educator. He was the first the term is the first worshipful master. So we're not worshiping him. I want to be very clear, but the term worshipful master is just like the president of a local lodge, basically. He becomes the first master of Afrikan Lodge number 459. And from there, Afrikan lodges spread from Boston to Philadelphia.
What was the name of that lodge again, brother? Say that name of that lodge again.
It was it was Afrikan Lodge 459. AFRICAN Lodge 459.
I just want to get that out, man.
Yeah. Which I happen to be an honorary member of as well. I don't know if you are, but I happen to be an honorary member of Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, I got you covered. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I got to get
Don't worry about it. Yes, sir. So he was the first master of Afrikan Lodge, and from there, lodges spread throughout the country. Eventually, we formed our own Grand Lodges, which a Grand Lodge is an administrative body that governs individual lodges throughout a state or country, what have you. This is everything I just described to you all happened before 1820.
Wow.
I mean, most people of African descent in the United States are being held in bondage at this point. And so, much like everything else, I like how Dr. John Henry Clark said it. He said, that the European thugs who oppressed us, particularly in the United States, were so vicious and vile that we either had to, if we wanted something, we either had to build it ourselves or do without it entirely. And that's the same thing with Freemasonry. Prince Hall was made a Mason. He was granted a charter from the United Grand Lodge of England, okay, which still exists, okay. But as far as the organization goes, even as the country, United States wasn't always this rich superpower that it is today. But as it developed, we weren't given access to some of those type of, like you said, government resources or what have you, for most of our history, really, up until the present almost. So how did we build the organization? Very simple. You got 5 cents. I got 10 cents. Guess what? We're going to figure out how to make a quarter. That's literally how it was done. Over time, as the free Black community developed, you started to have people of means who were able to, some were able to contribute more than others, maybe not necessarily financially, but in other ways. Okay. The brothers were able to, at certain points in different parts of the country, to start entire businesses. Like, for example, in Texas, they actually had a bank, okay, which a lot of folks don't know about. But if anyone's in the Fort Worth, Dallas-Fort Worth area, I encourage you to check out the Wilbur Curtis Library and Museum. Go down there and ask them about it. They'll tell you all about it, okay? And over time, this organization was able to build itself out through, I think, one of the basic means of doing so is that as a Mason, especially, you have to think about it. A lot of these people are freed. Some of these people are runaways, right? Coming into an organization like Freemasonry, if you didn't already have these skills, you're learning bookkeeping by collecting dues. You're learning about how to, banking and stuff like that, if you didn't already have those skills already. And so over time, it was just a natural progression. And as I said, Masons were supposed to be builders. So the lodge we may have started our lodge out, in a church, in the church basement, or what have you, some type of hall somewhere. But eventually, brothers and eventually sisters is going to get together. We're going to say, wait a minute, we want to have our own building. And if we have our own space, we're going to build it. If we got to build it from scratch, ain't nobody else going to help us. The white Masons aren't going to help us. And we can talk about that, right? But we're going to build our building. And then maybe there's the Elks, maybe there's the Oddfellows, maybe there's some other fraternal organizations in town that want to use our hall. Maybe the Black church needs a space for a dance or something like that. Well, hey, y'all want to come here? Sure, you can come and fellowship here. Now you're going to pay, and we're going to take that money and reinvest it into something else in the lodge or in the community or what have you. And that's how it goes. And even to this day, where I'm sitting, I happen to be sitting across the street from the Grand Lodge that I belong to. When that building was being constructed, Booker T. Washington, who was also a Prince Hall Mason, actually came here to D.C. as a guest of then Grand Master Judge Robert H. Terrell, the husband of Mary Church Terrell. And he gave us, a blueprint. He said, hey, look, if y'all going to build a building, what you need to do is you need to have the bottom floors be dedicated to commerce and the top floor is dedicated to Masonic work. Okay. And so at one point in time, just to give you an example, our building located at 1000 U Street Northwest, which is a historical landmark, built by a noted Black architect, Albert Cassell. And if anyone doesn't know who that is, Albert Cassell constructed most of the classical buildings at Howard University, where I went to school. Very important Black architect. So at one point in time, our basement had a restaurant and bowling alley. Our first floor has a retail space, which currently has a CVS in it. This is a Black-owned building, Black built and operated building. We got a CVS written from us. Okay. Then there's an office that the NAACP has that they've had for probably 60 years or so, which we can talk about that relationship. I'd love to talk about that. Second floor has a ballroom, which, again, we have all type of groups that come in there and rent that out. Third floor is some offices and a library, which I happen to.
So this is like cooperative economics.
Exactly.
Even in that period of time, is cooperative economics is a susu.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that as well? We're bringing these things together, even as our brothers are in bondage, even as some of them are running away, even if some of them are being free, becoming what they know as free Blacks. Then we're putting together our foundation without the help of any white organizations or government funding. We're doing this, and that's
and I want to be clear about something
that nobody talks about.
Yeah, and I want to be clear about something. Why I'm mentioning the building here in DC. Third floor, like I said, we have a library, some other offices, a store. Fourth floor is, the ladies run the fourth floor, except for one space where we have a credit union. Wow. Which was today is the DC Teachers Federal Credit Union. Today, originally it was known as the Prince Hall Masonic Credit Union. Okay. Wow. Which still, and that credit union that we started actually has multiple branches and whatnot now. Okay, throughout the city. Okay. Fifth floor, the brothers. Sixth floor, we got some administrative offices. I'm telling this as a basic blueprint for Black Power. Pun intended, right? This is
within like the first 100 years of Black Freemasonry. We're doing all these types of things.
Exactly. And then you think about it. If you could, for those who aren't familiar with DC, like I said, we're located 1000 U Street. Diagonally across the street from our building is Industrial Bank, which was established by Jesse H. Mitchell. Jesse H. Mitchell founds this bank. It's to this day is still one of the wealthiest Black banks, one of the most successful Black banks in American history. Oh, wait a minute. Jesse H. Mitchell was at the time our Grand Master. So is it any secret? Is it any surprise that when you go over here, you can look at the cornerstone and you see his name etched on the cornerstone of our building? But let me take you back now. That building and whatnot was something that he facilitated, but it wasn't necessarily his idea. This was an idea that the generation before him. Now you're talking about people who, some of them were children or teenagers when slavery is ending, who they planned ahead of time and said, "Hey, we're going to invest and put some money together, and we might not live to see it, but our brothers and sisters in the future are going to have a space to call their own." You see, this is the type of things that are going on.
Generational push, that we're really missing today. That our ancestors had back then, and they were using Freemasonry to build things in their community. And like I said, nobody really talks about that as a American historical fact for Black
Right.
people, unfortunately.
Right, absolutely, and it's unfortunate, you know. And I think you have this. If I don't want to skip ahead of you, but when we think about the Black Towns movement, you know, particularly in the West, oftentimes we talk about the Greenwood section in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but there are a number of other Black towns, Black Wall Streets, if you will. I promise you, whenever you go and you look at how the Black community develops in those areas, Prince Hall Freemasonry is right there at the heart of it. Although it's not necessarily known, it may or may not necessarily be known or recognized.
Right.
But we don't necessarily do things for recognition. We do things because it's the right thing to do, which has been, I think, a double-edged sword in some ways. But
absolutely,
it is what it is.
Talk to me about 1788, a Mandinka language or a Mandinka language in a Prince Hall Freemason Lodge.
Right. So there is a news article. I think it's the Philadelphia Gazette, if I'm not mistaken, that describes a meeting of the original African Lodge, and what they talk about is that a Masonic education lecture being given in the Mandinka or Mandingo language in that particular piece. Now there are some who would say that this is supposed to be an insulting writing and whatnot, and saying that, hey, these Africans, they over there speaking that African mumbo jumbo, trying to pretend like they some Masons and whatever. But then there's some like myself who say, well, why not? Why wouldn't our ancestors be bilingual in the 1780s? And I'm going to tell y'all like this, and I don't usually brag or boast or what have you about things that I do in this organization. I really don't. But I will tell you this, though. In 2014, I was made aware of a conference being held here in DC. It was the Atlantic Brotherhoods Conference. And so I, being the assistant grand historian at that time, I said, hey, I looked at the schedule. Friday night, they had a whole night dedicated to African American Masonry. I showed up. It wasn't but 2 Black Masons there, and I was one of them. And so I'm there listening to some of these scholars of European descent. And one of them, he actually said, he thought that this was symbolic language that they're saying about using the Mandingo language and stuff like that in the African Lodge. And he thought this was his word, not mine. He thought it was ridiculous and preposterous to think that these Africans were speaking Mandingo in a Masonic Lodge. He said, there was so much that would have had to have happened for, imagine what kind of a person could go from Africa speaking that language, come to America, and then join Freemasonry and know enough about Masonry to I said, wait a minute, time out in the court. You're saying that a boat ride would make people forget their language? Are you trying to say that? Are you trying to say that my grandparents couldn't speak like we have to understand that there's an evolution from speaking strictly African languages to speaking English or Spanish or Portuguese or whatever. And I mean, today, if there's anybody here who's a first generation American, I know that you may have had to translate some stuff for your parents.
Absolutely.
So these are the type of things that we get subjected to, which are really ridiculous notions that no other group of people on the planet will be subjected to. However, imagine if I had not been there, if we had not been present in that space, that becomes the narrative, Right. But for me, I said, hey, it makes sense. And then think about it. Going back to your first question, why did Prince Hall and these brothers have a lodge named African Lodge? Okay.
Something nobody has a rebuttal for,
Right.
They could have named it anything.
Right. Now you could say, now for those of us who understand how Masonic administration works, the Grand Lodge may give you the name, or you may choose it for yourself when you're starting in the lodge. So you could say, well, the English, the United Grand Lodge of England gave them that name. It's okay. They could have wrote back and said, no, we don't like that. We want to be something else. Right. But they didn't. Matter of fact.
And then later on, it became African Lodge #1. So they had time to change it.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, at one point in time, right around the time they got the charter, this was in, I think, 1787 or so, or 88, there was a newspaper that talked about a St. John's Day march that these brothers were participating in, and the newspaper referred to them as St. Blak's Lodge. And Prince Hall wrote into this newspaper and said,
I remember that. He was like, we ain't no St. Black's Lodge.
We ain't St. Black. We are the African Lodge.
We African Lodge.
Right. And so why would they do this? This is the same time period where you have the Free African Society being established by Absalom Jones and Bishop Richard Allen, both of whom would become Masons under Prince Hall's banner and start the African Lodge of Philadelphia. You have the African Methodist Episcopal Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. You see, our identity as African people in this country is something that we evolved into over time. Right. Africans, quote unquote, did not get on slave ships. Wolof, Mandinka, Igbo, Yoruba, the same stuff that we got going on now on the continent, that's who got on the boat. And over time, we had to come to an understanding of, wait a minute, why are we all down here and all these people up there? What's the, we went thousands of years. Yeah, I mean, I know we kind of look alike, but I mean, y'all seriously going to chain us up because of that? But over time, we had to come to a common understanding that we had a common enemy, we had common oppression, and over time, we form a common identity through common institutions and common experiences. And so that's why today, and I did mention I'm a genealogist as well, the African in the United States, in the North, Central, and South America, genetically speaking, is much more diverse than most Africans on the continent. And it makes sense. It makes sense. We're all mixed up.
Yeah, because of our experience.
Yeah, we're all mixed up. Right. And so yes, we formed the African Lodge, and that's where we went from there.
Talk to me about Angelo Solomon.
Okay. So Angelo Solomon was an African Mason who lived in Europe during the classical period, so to speak. He actually was a member of the same lodge as Mozart, if I'm not mistaken. He actually was an early African. I don't even know how to say this right. Afro-European, I guess you would say, intellectual, so to speak. And so he actually was noted in their history over in Austria, if I'm not mistaken, as helping to pioneer a lot about Masonic education during that period. He was affiliated with a lot of the Austrian and German royalty and aristocracy. As I mentioned, there's discussion about him with his relationship to Mozart and whatnot. As a matter of fact, there's a play, I believe it's called the Magic Flute, which touches on him. Now the unfortunate thing about Angelo Solomon's life is that he again was born in Africa. Unfortunately, he dies. I think he had a heart attack or a stroke or something in the middle of the street, and his corpse was actually stuffed. They did a taxidermy on him, and his body was put on display in a museum because they said this black man of such high intelligence, he had to be a freak of nature. Let's look at him as he in his corpse state. So it's a very unfortunate, tragic end to his life. However, one thing I would say is that Angelo Solomon, you go to a number of others, black men around the world who were involved in Freemasonry. It's a very rich heritage that doesn't get talked about as much as it should.
Right. I'm gonna show the people because people be think I be making this stuff up, man.
Right.
So Angelo Solomon. That's how Angelo Solomon looks.
Mm-hmm.
See, he was born in 1721 in present day Nigeria or Cameroon. We know that they border each other at some point. So that would be where he was born. And this is clearly an African man that was born in Africa.
Yep.
And according to the lessons and things of that nature, he's instrumental in bringing in the more scholarly side of Masonry into this particular place. Like Brother Morgan said, he was Austrian. He was Austrian Freemason. So he was amongst them. So, these guys at some point didn't have the scholarly vigor. But Mr. Angelo Solomon comes in and starts teaching in there.
And you have to think about why. I think it's important that we understand why. Why would an African person, why would an African man be interested in joining Freemasonry, particularly in the 1700s into the 1800s? I think one of the reasons why, having been to Africa twice myself, I've been to Egypt and I've been to Nigeria. Africa, for those who've been there, know Africa is a land of initiations and mysticism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so if you understand that you can't take thousands upon thousands of years of history and culture and destroy it all entirely, even with 400 or 500 years of slavery. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm going to give these Europeans credit. They did the best they could, but they could not completely do as they attempted to, which was to wipe us of our humanity entirely and just make us into robots. You know what I mean? That's all they really wanted was a labor force, right? So what do? You practice syncretism. What you do is you say, hey, you take the things that are around you to try to craft a world for yourself in a way that you see fit. Freemasonry plays a really unique role in that, particularly in the United States, but elsewhere also, because white people did not want us going off and practicing our initiation rites. They, rites of passage from boyhood to manhood, girlhood to womanhood. That's why you can be 60, 70 years old and they still say boy, right? They wanted to keep you at an infantile, juvenile level in the law and in every other way. Freemasonry, however, once we get into it, brothers look around and say, we could use this. Because not only is there a secret philosophy, not only is there all these rites and rituals and stuff, but you know what I think is the most important thing about, or one of the most important things about it, is it's sacred space that we can have and control. Once we get in it, we can go in the lodge and we can say, hey, brothers, we're going to do a degree tonight. Brothers, another thing I think is important for the African psychology is when a brother dies, hey, we're going to give him a Masonic burial service. Oh. And then another side of it, which we definitely need to talk about is, all right, brothers, we got some guns, and we got some machetes, and we need a place to storm. All right, well, we're gonna put them under. These are the things.
Not ready for that, man.
Yeah. This is the things
for that role in the rebellion.
This is the things that's going on during this period. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And so a lot of us, unfortunately today, because we don't necessarily recognize that history, we're not aware of it. So I often say, and again, I have a kind of a dual role because I do work as a grand historian for the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of DC, but I also work here at the Civil War Museum, which is where I'm sitting right now, and so I often tell folks, and we do have mentions of Prince Hall and Prince Hall Masons in our exhibit. I often tell our visitors, so you can't tell the full story of the Underground Railroad, the Civil War, without understanding the importance of African American Freemasonry, Prince Hall Freemasonry. You just can't do it.
Absolutely. Talk to me about our brother Bruce Grit, aka John Edward Bruce.
Oh man, that's that man. I love that brother there. Bruce Grit is coming along at a very important time. As a writer, journalist, a historian during the Roaring Twenties, the New Negro Movement, Harlem Renaissance era, however you want to call it. He's an associate of Garvey's as well as Arturo Schomburg, and he's one of these brothers, along with Hubert Henry Harrison, who's out there teaching. These brothers was coming hard at that particular time in New York, and was dropping some serious knowledge. He's another one of those kind of figures that I think doesn't get the shine, so to speak, that he deserves. But when you go back and you look at those who've seen the Spike Lee Malcolm X film, and you remember this scene where Malcolm is teaching on the steps ladder, and then they got Al Sharpton and those other people, that was Harlem. Okay, that was Harlem during that period. Now, to understand the early or some of the aspects of Garveyism during that period, and how does this relate, you have to understand that the brothers who were involved in Prince Hall Masonry at this particular time, particularly in New York, but elsewhere also, again, are using it as a means to an end, as far as saying, hey, look, we're in here, we're getting this knowledge, we're doing this, that, and third, so that we can go back out and support the movement. At that time, they would say they were race men, race women, right? And so oftentimes what you will find is we don't necessarily think about how are some of these things getting funded? Like, who's printing these? Like when we think about the Garvey paper, the Negro World and whatnot, where did some of these people get these skills from? Matter of fact, do we actually know the titles and ranks of people in the UNIA? We always hear about Garvey, but what were some of the other titles and people in the Garvey?
What was everybody else doing?
Yeah,
where did they get the skills to do that?
Exactly, but not just the skills. Let's talk about the office titles for a second. Why is it you go in the Garvey movement and people are walking around with titles like the High Potentate? Where did they get that from?
Man, I say this all the time. You know, because you know, in this community that we operate in, you know, it's such a bad stigma about Freemasons, but we walk around and we call people, you know, Grandmaster Teacher so and so.
Right.
We're doing the same thing. Oh, and we don't remember, or you know, it's not publicized where these titles come from. They come from Freemasonry.
Absolutely.
It's no other way around it.
Absolutely. Matter of fact, I have something for you. I'm gonna take you back. We jumped ahead to the 20th century. I got something that I've never revealed before publicly. I would like to show it to you now. That I know you would love, and I think your audience will love too, to understand kind of a little bit about what I'm talking about. Is okay? This is a world. This is a world. We forget the graphic, the world premiere. Are you ready for this?
World premiere.
All right. Let me see here. I'm gonna share my screen here. Let's see. Share screen. Wait. I think it's on another desktop. Hold on 1 second. I got you covered. Okay. Y'all should be able to see this now. Can you see this? Can y'all see my screen here?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is coming from the Star and Banner, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Y'all heard of Gettysburg before, right? November 22nd, 1831. It's talking about what is Freemasonry, right? Now we're going to scroll down a little bit here. And, what does it say? Quote, it is supposed that the Negroes in the South are influenced by the African Lodge of Masons in New York. Let the American people beware and keep an eagle eye upon Masonry, that it does not stir up more mischief in the Republic before 2 years. Now let's keep reading for a second. We cut the above from some paper in our exchange list with a view to call public attention to this subject. There are men who would not be indifferent to the existence of African lodges throughout our country, and who do yet turn a deaf ear to the remonstrances of Rush, to the admonitions of Colden and Vert, and to the independent opinion of John Quincy Adams. That which may reasonably and does manifestly excite alarm in the bosom of thousands when it is known to exist among their dependents. Basically saying white folks got a problem with Masonry being among,
y'all making us nervous. Them black Freemasons is making us nervous.
Right.
That's what that means.
Well, let's keep going though. It is known to exist among and subjects should equally excite the alarm of all the governments when found among their dependents and subjects. In Boston, there is a most worshipful Grand African Lodge, and whether the famous Walker pamphlets emanated from its chivalrous order. What Walker pamphlets are they talking about?
You're talking about David Walker.
That's right, because David Walker is a member of the African Lodge, of the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of Massachusetts, and a very active member at that. Okay. So he's a member of the Chivalrous Order of Knights, or whether Walker, their author, is a Grand Master of the order or a member at all, we neither can deny nor affirm. I can affirm that he was. Okay. He was a member. He wasn't a Grand Master. He was a member. Now check this out. But this is certain. No black man of the Nat Turner spirit can fail to discern the immense facilities which a benevolent and charitable order of aprons and trowels and chaste emblems and deadly penalties will at any time furnish to his hands for secretly diffusing his opinions and spreading his designs from the trestle board of the lodge to the bosom of the slaves and free blacks from Baltimore to New Orleans. It is true, the blacks are not allowed to congregate either for church or lodge worship by themselves, and where the members cannot assemble, there cannot be a lodge. But the grand hailing sign, the passwords and the grips, the obligations, to forewarn and to conceal, to appraise and to rescue, to serve and to defend a brother Mason, are all completely suited to designs of mischief, to which the oppressed and ignorant condition of the blacks exposes them 1,000-fold more than Chaseborough, Whitney, Bruce, Sawyer, and King were exposed to the temptation of taking liberty or life of a free man. Virginia is in a situation profitably to reflect upon this view of the subject.
Wow.
This is November 22nd of 1831.
Wow.
So, is something else happening around that time period that would have white people in Virginia real nervous? I'm just curious.
Man, let me tell you, man. A lot of people don't know that David Walker appeal is highly associated with why Nat Turner did what he did,
Exactly.
or the person that they described as Nat Turner did what he did. He read the appeal. Exactly. And I've read the appeal. It's a tough read if you're not a Christian, but the point of the appeal is we tired of this. Y'all said that y'all was good Christian folk. You're not acting like good Christian folk, and we ain't gonna take this much longer.
Yep.
That's the point of the appeal. And we see that permeated from the Masonic Lodge.
Exactly.
So you can't love Nat Turner, praise Nat Turner, talk about Nat Turner without talking about the appeal, which was written by David Walker, which came from the Masonic Lodge.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
Point blank period. And let's give our ancestor John Edward Bruce some love as well. They knew him as Bruce Grit. Just the top line, man. This dude was a journalist, historian, orator, writer, civil rights activist, and Pan-African nationalist. Pan-African nationalist. This is coming out of the Masonic Lodge. Co-founding newspapers, Arturo Schomburg, who we're going to get into as well, the Negro Society for Historical Research in New York. And this brother was a Prince Hall Freemason. And where did he come out of?
HU.
Howard University.
That's right.
It's something about that Howard University, man. And people are going to say, well, it's no proof that he was a Freemason. Right here. Prince Hall Freemason pioneer Negro. Masonry in his partial bibliography. And also we can see right here, Hubert Henry Harrison, as you said, was an associate of his. And right here, Marcus Garvey.
Oh, wait, and we can talk about Garvey too, because see, a lot of folks don't realize how Prince Hall Masons, who some people actually say Garvey himself was a Mason. His wife actually said that. I didn't say he said it. I mean, she said it, but I can't independently verify that outside, in terms of records. But let's talk about some important aspects of Prince Hall Masonry and Pan-African nationalism and Pan-African nationalists. I'm gonna give you all a name that we all should know. We all probably don't. But have you ever heard of? Are you familiar with Dr. Joseph Robert Love?
Heard of the name.
Dr. Love was a big influence on Garvey. He actually helped design the Jamaican education system. Okay, he served as Grand Master of Prince Hall Masons in Georgia and Florida.
That's a long reach.
I'm gonna say that again.
It's a long reach, boy.
He was old enough to have an influence on Garvey. He was a Pan-African nationalist, designed Jamaica's education system, all of that. Okay. And was the Grand Master of the Black Masons in Georgia and Florida, teaching like that. And matter of fact, since you go ahead and pull, you can pull him up real quick if you can, good brother. Because I like how
you said Joseph Love,
Dr. Joseph Robert Love. Because I'm gonna just take you to the door. I'm gonna let you walk through it, and we gonna all experience this in a moment together.
Okay, let's do this.
There he is right there.
Robert Love, 19th century Bahamian-born medical doctor, clergyman, teacher, journalist, politician, Pan-Africanist. Lived and studied successfully in the Bahamas, the United States of America, Haiti, and Jamaica. Spent the last decades of his life in Jamaica, where he held political office, published a newspaper, and advocated for the island's Black majority.
Do me a favor, skip down. Let's look at the books that this brother wrote. If you can, I think it's on the references.
Yeah, I don't think they have any of his books.
No, they should have them on there.
On this particular article.
Go down to the reference section. Let's see here. Wait, is that it? Let's see. What's your name? No, they don't have one. Hold on one sec. Because that brother there.
I'm on this external link.
Let me see. Give me one moment. Because he's all right. So Brother Love published two. He published two books that are known to have survived. Okay. Are you ready for the titles?
Go ahead.
The first one is. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna do reverse. So the last one he wrote was St. Peter's True Position in the Church, clearly traced in the Bible. Now that was published in 1897. Okay. But his first book in 1892, you ready for it?
Right.
Romanism is not Christianity.
I see it right here. Love published 2 works. Romanism is not Christianity. Hey, shout out to my brother Amin Ma'at, man, because he got a whole line called The Roman Illusion. Hey, brother, somebody that had a great idea just like you. Romanism is not Christian. Okay. And
Mic drop.
Wow. That's what we talking about, man. Like, this is African American history that doesn't get talked about. And look at this line right here. It says that he advocated, encouraged Black people to assert their equality, educate themselves, develop self-esteem and pride in their African heritage.
Correct.
That's what Brother Joseph Robert Love was about. That's what he did, man. We don't talk about this. It's something that's buried in the the annals of history. But these brothers are proud people.
Yep. And if you think about it, why was Marcus Garvey coming to America in the first place? People forget Garvey was coming here because he wanted to meet Booker T. Washington so he could establish a Tuskegee University type school in Jamaica.
Yep.
Why was he interested in establishing a school in Jamaica? Because Joseph Robert Love was an influence on him. That's what Garvey wanted to do originally.
Yep.
But Booker T had died when not. So we have to understand that there's the history that's known, like you said, and there's a history that's not so well known. And it's all important, but things are not always what they seem, so to speak. Oh, and there's the man with the plan right there as well. Yes, sir.
About this brother, man.
Oh man, my man, Arturo Alfonso Schomburg. Man, I often have referred to him kind of as an intellectual great grandfather for me, in many ways. Obviously, we know that he was a Black bibliophile. His collection formed what is now today the Schomburg Center for Black Research and Culture.
I visited. Great place to go.
As have I. Again, Pan-Africanist journalist. His brother was Afro-Puerto Rican. So we have to understand that you can be Black and African in many different flavors, but he still was, he sat at that nexus, but understood that a lot of the politics of the day was mitigated or were dictated to him by the fact that he carried African blood. Okay, Garvey, once again. Oh, and by the way, how many of us know that this brother's established, I believe it was the first Spanish language lodge among the Prince Hall Masons in New York?
Wow.
El Sol de Cuba Lodge, number 38.
Oh, wow.
Which today exists as Prince Hall Lodge 38, but originally was called El Sol de Cuba, or the Cuban Sun Lodge, number 38. Spanish language lodge. This brother becomes the Grand Secretary of the entire state of New York for Prince Hall Masons. And by the way, did y'all know that he wrote a book on Prince Hall Masonry too?
Yeah.
Yeah, he wrote a book called Masonic Truths, okay, where he is talking about the hypocrisy of white Freemasonry, not recognizing Black Freemasonry, and gets into the history of who we were as Black Masons and whatnot. Okay, he also wrote several other histories of other Black fraternal organizations as well, such as the New York African Society for Mutual Relief. Okay, just a giant in terms of African Pan-Africanist history, African intellectual history. We can't praise this brother enough for the things that he did.
Big influence on John Henrik Clarke.
Absolutely. How did I leave that out?
Big influence on John Henrik Clarke. As right here, it mentions John Henrik Clarke. The autodidact historian John Henrik Clarke told of being so inspired by the essay that at age 17 he left his home in Columbus, Georgia, to seek out Mr. Schomburg to further his studies in African history. We wouldn't even have John Henrik Clarke if it wasn't for this brother.
No, we would not.
We wouldn't even have it. You know, when you talk about that Harlem History Club, man, the Harlem Renaissance movement, this is all permeating throughout Freemasonry amongst these men. You can't say it was just one guy. We done showed you 3 already, and then we ain't even scratched the surface.
Well, as a matter of fact, I neglected to mention the fact that So as you know, we have the Philaxis Society, which is our research organization within Prince Hall Freemasonry. And this is for the brothers now. If any brothers or sisters want here, what if I told you that I found out back then they had a historical society within Prince Hall Masonry before the society we have today? Okay, it was called the Negro Masonic Historical Research Society.
Wow.
Okay, and they was publishing the magazine back then in the 1910s, 1920s, coming with Black history and its interrelationship with Freemasonry.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? So sometimes the things that we do, we think that we're doing something new, but in fact we are not. You know what I mean? And I know that's true for my personal story. I think you want to get into that as well at some point. But I know that's true for me. Sometimes we got to start giving our ancestors credit, y'all. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be on my soapbox today, but you know, sometimes we get this attitude of we done changed our diet up, we done changed our names, and all of a sudden we know more than grandma and grandpa ever did in their life. Now you might know some things, but I'm gonna tell you one thing right now, whether it's through Prince Hall Freemasonry, through the Black Church, or what have you, one thing I know about our ancestors were builders. Our ancestors understood the principle of if I take 5 cents and you got 10, we're gonna figure out how to make $1 out of it. And they got these look, some of us may not be in the church or never were, or whatever, but our ancestors got these churches built. They got these lodges built to have space so we can have these conversations that we're having. Exactly. You cannot take that away from them. I don't care, you know, I don't care who it was. You know, we might have our disagreements now, you know, that we move further in time, but we got to give them that. We have to.
Talk to me about the Boston plan, brother.
You said the Boston plan?
Yes.
So this is something that one of my mentors, Brother A. Tahuti Evans, who serves as a special grand historian here in DC, that he talks about. It's a paradigm that he, I won't say he created, but something that he wrote, which is he looked at how Prince Hall and these brothers were moving in Boston in the 1700s. And what he saw was a pattern develop of how the free Black community throughout the United States developed, which is you get a Masonic lodge. There's 3 institutions that you're going to see at the beginning of any Black community in the United States. There's a Masonic lodge, a church, usually an AME church, not always, but usually, and a Black school. When you look at the roots of the oldest lodge, the oldest Black school, the oldest church in any given, especially major city in the United States, you're going to find 9 times out of 10, it's the same guys. And those guys are usually members of the lodge and the church and have something to do with the school. Usually you're going to find that. I know it's true in Boston. I can prove it in Philadelphia. I can darn sure prove it here in DC, where I live. You can go to Baltimore. You can go to New Orleans. You can go wherever you want to go. You're going to start seeing that pattern. And from those 3 institutions, you're going to start seeing your first Black civic rights.
Uh-oh. There you go. There you go. Brother, can you hear me? You froze up. Well, while that brother is getting it together, I want to show y'all this as well. You gotta hide the camera off. That's bandwidth. Okay. If you can hear me, brother James, try hiding your camera. That might give you some more bandwidth. But while he is getting his together, I wanted to show y'all this. It's right here, man. It's from pbs.org. The Boston Plan was in fact a network of plans, a prototype of similar undertakings in other parts of the country. As Mason Samuel Stevens, the first to sign the petition, wrote to Anthony Tyler and Newport, we heartily agree with you in sending secular letters to our free Black in all states that it will strengthen our numbers. Years of abuse had led to Boston petitioners. Okay, he's back. Hold on. Hey, brother.
Hey, give me 1 second. Look, we getting so deep. A brother wasn't paying attention to the battery life. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. But it says years of abuse have led the Boston petitioners to believe that despite the relief in some measures delivered by the new constitution, which had been adopted by the state under which Elizabeth Freeman, Quock Walker, and others had gained their freedom, that their very disagreeable and disadvantaged circumstances would likely continue so long as we and our children live in America. That's important. They propose that the general court provide the money to procure the land to settle upon and obtain the passage for us and our families, and to furnish us with the necessary provisions and utensils and articles. The House accepted the petition, but despite early optimism, it remained buried in committee. So this is 1787, ladies and gentlemen. This is Prince Hall before many of our great leaders saying, hey, if y'all don't want us here and y'all gonna treat us like crap, send us back to Africa.
Right.
The money that you made off our backs. They cited the conditions that they lived in. They cited disadvantage. They cited all of these things. This is the Back to Africa movement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this is it. This is it right here, coming from the man that gave us Freemasonry for Black folks. This is it, you know. And we can talk about some of the others. You know, we can talk about Edward Blyden, but he's later on. We can talk about Marcus Garvey. He's later on. This is the origin. The origin of the Black Back to Africa movement starts with Prince Hall, starts with Black Freemasonry.
And if we're going to throw names in there, we can't forget the great Martin Robinson Delaney, who wrote the first book, book-length work on Prince Hall Freemasonry as well, by the way.
Another Masonic brother. So I mean, there's no getting around it at this point. And I brought this brother on the show because I'm tired of the narrative. I'm tired of the conspiracy. I'm tired of people having to be in shame and not tell people and all this other stuff. That time is over for Black folks. That time is over because we got too much history in Black Freemasonry for it to be ignored. We got too much. It's way too much. Brothers that are Black Freemasons should be proud. Brothers that are Black Freemasons understand that this year at the United Supreme Council, and I believe you know the brother that's the grand historian there. He said there's no other organization as far as funding that funded the civil rights movement more than Black Freemasonry. And he has all the receipts. He's got all, he's talking about how, and even when you talk about just protection, Thurgood Marshall, who was a Freemason, was doing stuff, you know, that ruffled a lot of feathers. You know, he Black judge, you know, they ain't feeling that. Brothers protected him. We're talking about physical security. We're talking about funding his research.
Yes, sir.
You know, no other organization can make that claim. And
matter of fact, I would ask people this, you know, who wrote the checks for the legal defense for the Brown versus Board of Education decision? Matter of fact, do we even know that initially that you had it was the Prince Hall Legal Research Defense Fund that Thurgood Marshall was able to set up with Amos T. Hall, who was his Grand Master in Oklahoma, who was also an attorney himself?
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? There was we you know, that's why every Prince Hall Grand Lodge ended up getting paying for life memberships in the NAACP. That's why I think I mentioned earlier, my Grand Lodge where my membership is, we still have the NAACP office in our building right now today. Okay. Wow. And when you talk to people like our museum's founder, Dr. Frank Smith of Redemption Lodge number 24, by the way. If you talk to him, he's a civil rights activist, SNCC veteran, who did a lot of organizing in Mississippi, okay, with the late great Stokely Carmichael, aka Kwame Ture, okay, and others down in Mississippi. He'll tell you right now. He'll say, "Look, we had our meetings in the Masonic Grand Lodge, in the Stringer Grand Lodge in Mississippi. Because why? Because that was a space we controlled, and anybody wanted to come mess with us. All right, come on, let's see what happens.
Own, operate, and control.
Owned, operate, and control. And I'm not going to tell you everything that I know, but I will tell you this: Medgar Evers was a member of the Mississippi jurisdiction. He was killed by a member of the White Grand Lodge of Mississippi. And you know, there may have been some things, and there's things that happened in our history that we're not going to talk about. I'm gonna just put it like that. So don't think that just because when you see, oh man, they went and they did this to us back in the day and they lynched us and stuff. People think that we just ate that.
Nah,
that's not true.
That's not true at all.
It's not true. And I'll leave it at that.
Everything that's understood don't need to be discussed.
Exactly.
You know.
Exactly. So we got to be clear about that. We have to be clear about that.
I'm going. You got a world premiere. I got a world premiere as well. I've never presented this.
Okay.
Never presented this. So can you see my hold on, let's see. Hold on. Let me remove it and add it back.
My Wi-Fi is acting up a little bit. I may drop out and come back in again.
I shared it right. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay.
I can hear you. Let's see here.
So this article right here.
Okay.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Many do not know he had plans to be a Mason and was going through the process to be a Mason, but he never made it back from Memphis. He never made it back. So, you know, we don't posthumously award, you know, degrees on people that are not living. But you can see right here at his funeral, Sister Coretta and the Brothers of the Masonic Lodge right there. And they did honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for his contributions and gave him a Masonic proclamation. So this is this is what they could do. They couldn't make him a Mason in death, but they did give him a Masonic proclamation because he was, in fact, going to be a Mason if he would have made it back from Memphis. And
correct.
This is past Grand Master Barksdale and Martin Luther King Jr. III with Coretta in front of the I Have a Dream plaque at MLK International Chapel. And you can see the Masonic emblem right there.
Yeah, because we often forget that his father, Daddy King, was a Mason. Okay, yes. Closely affiliated with John Wesley Dobbs, who was Grand Master back during that time period. Okay, I want to, if it's all right with you, good brother, I want to read something to you all.
This is true as well. With the sisters sharing, they did send donations to the SCLC. So I just wanted to show that. Go ahead, brother.
Yes, indeed. So this is coming from a name that we haven't touched on just yet, but we need to. The name of this person is Joseph A. Walks, who was.
Oh yeah, you know he was on. I had him on here.
Oh yes, sir. Yes, sir. Brother Walks was a pioneering historian of Black Freemasonry. Okay. And I just want to kind of, read to you all one of my favorite quotes from him. Just give me 1 second. I thought I knew right where it was. And let me see here. All right, here we go. Okay, so he says, quote, "The history of Prince Hall Freemasonry is in reality the history of the Black experience in America. In fact, if one wanted to explore Black history, one could do so equally as well by perusing the proceedings of the various Prince Hall Grand and individual lodges. While the Black church, Black educational institutions, the Black press, and in later years, the Black civil rights organizations may have been publicly perceived as the hegemony of Black America, this perception may have been misleading, for none of these Black institutions could match the quiet, determined, persistent role of leadership that came from the Masonic lodges of Prince Hall Freemasonry, and often hidden from view and unknown by the public is the fact that the leaders of many of these institutions were for the most part led by or sustained by Prince Hall Freemasons.
A book that all Black folks should read, whether you're a Mason or not. Black Square and Compass, 200 Years of Prince Hall Freemasonry. And when I was a young Mason, a young brother that, just coming into Masonry, I met a man named Leon Wright. Leon Wright is a martial artist. He is in the Black Belt Hall of Fame. Leon Wright has trained many brothers to defend themselves, but he asked me some questions I could not answer about Freemasonry. And he recommended this book. And in this book, it really sparked my brain as a researcher. So this is why I definitely recommend it to brothers in and out of the lodge. You will find different people in history that were Masons that fact that they were was omitted. When you talk about the Buffalo Soldiers, when you talk about, everybody loves the movie Glory, great movie. Them brothers was on the square.
Yeah.
All of the characters that you love from that movie, Morgan Freeman's character, Denzel Washington's character, all of those brothers, they was Freemasons. So,
absolutely.
A lot of people don't know that. It's something that's been buried, not really talked about. But, unfortunately, we have to do shows like this to bring this information out. I want to ask you, brother, the Illuminati connection.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk about that, brother, and how that has basically spawned out of control?
All right, this interview is over. No, I'm joking. Yeah, sure. Let's have the conversation. First of all, I'm about to sound like you. I'm tired of people talking about stuff when they don't know what they're talking about. The Bavarian Illuminati was a secret society started by a man named, I believe it was Alexander Weishaupt. And he basically wanted to kind of take over Freemasonry in a way. And really it was a movement about, European scientists, and they wanted to have more control over the Masonic order and European society in general. Didn't really have anything to do with America per se, although they were inspired by the American Revolution to some degree. The conspiracy theory that people have today about this all-powerful secret order that is got everybody from me, you, to Jay-Z, to this one, to that one, honestly, this is poppycock. This is nonsense. This is like, what are we talking about? Like, the internet is a
that much power. I would get Jay-Z to introduce me to the people I needed to get to, so I can stop working.
That's what I'm saying. Look, I'm telling y'all right. Look, I'm telling y'all right now. They looking at me for the student loans. But of course somebody say, well, y'all ain't high enough. Y'all black. Y'all nah, man. Like Masonry. You definitely have some characters in Masonry. Whatever.
You're not the hot. Well, who are they?
Right. That's what I'm saying. And how you know? Like, I'm not. How you know I'm not one? But anyway, that's another story. But no, like the conspiracy theories have been around for a long time. Now in the Black community, I will say it's very interesting as a historian. Anti-Masonry doesn't really pop up in the Black community the way it does in the white community until really more recently with the internet. And I think this goes to. I think there's also a discussion that needs to be had about how integration has separated the Black community. So now you have Black kids who grow up in suburbs or wherever, away from, not around Black institutions, right, where they can have memories and say, oh yeah, my granddaddy was a Mason. So now these kids are, it's not just children. I don't want to blame the youth, but you have people who aren't as connected to our traditional institutions, so to speak. And so now they look at them with suspicion because you've been watching programming from other people. Okay. and not being tapped into programs like this one right here. So we got to make sure we support the MossiWarriorClan, okay, and other similar type of outlets to get the real information. You got to make sure you support the African American Civil War Museum. You know, I will do a shameless plug and encourage you to buy a copy of my book, you know, so that you can see, like, wait a minute, not only is this not what I thought it was, but like my granddaddy was in this, my grandma was in this. You know, for me, I go back 7 generations in Prince Hall Freemasonry, right? Like my ancestors was building lodges and churches and was this and that third. No, I thought we was just slaves and sharecroppers. I thought that was it. No, our ancestors was doing we're doing things, and that's why it's important for us to be doing things in the cause of African liberation, because that's what our ancestors were doing. So like one of my favorite songs from Nas said, carry on tradition. Well, however you want to define tradition.
Absolutely. So to reinforce your point, this is Adam Weishaupt.
Adam, I said Alexander, but it's Adam Weishaupt.
So this is the guy that started the Illuminati. He said the society's goal were to oppose superstition, obscurantism, religious influence over public life, and abuses of state power. The order of the day, they wrote in their general statutes, is to put an end to the machinations of the perverse of injustice, to control them without dominating them. I thought it was some devil worship stuff y'all said it was. This man was against the church and the state. He wanted to take over in Bavaria, which is in Germany, by the way. It's not in the United States. I forget. Yeah. I don't know why people. Anyway, you know, it's a case of this brother was a Freemason. He liked some of our symbols. He brought it over to his organization. As you said, he wanted to take over. He wanted to create his own thing. So, you know, this is the origins of the so-called New World Order and everything like that. And he had pamphlets, as you can see. He was spreading, you know, his doctrine.
Yep.
You know?
Absolutely.
So, you know, he was trying to do his thing, you know?
Absolutely.
And he wanted to incorporate Masonry into what he was doing. As you can see right here, his class 2 was of Masonic origin.
Absolutely.
That's what he was trying to do. That has nothing really to do with us. That was his creation. You know, we need to just put that to bed.
Thank you. I want to jump in here real quick, and because I'm seeing some notes in the chat here, because people are asking about where can they buy a copy of my book, and I neglected to mention that. So
I put it in there.
The book, you did? Okay, chat. Good. Yes, jamesrmorgan.com for anybody who's interested in a copy of my book, and I if you order from there, it does get I get it first, and I'll sign it for you, and it will get mailed from me directly to you. So again, it's jamesrmorgan.com. It's just my name. You can get it from right there.
Yep, and he does sign it. He ain't bull jiving, you know. He does sign it. So since that, let's talk about your book. Let's talk about the Lost Empire, Black Freemasonry in the Old West. Because when we think of the Old West, we think of the Lone Ranger and Tonto and a bunch of white guys going around with hats and 6-shooters and horses. We don't think about the brothers that was in the Old West. First of all, let's talk about who this is. Who is this?
So that right there on the cover is Captain William Dominic Matthews. That brother there was I wanted what was my man Yosemite Sam from the Looney Tunes. My man was like Yosemite Sam out there in the West, man. He was rooting this, tooting this, all of that, man. He was originally from Maryland. Born in October of 1828. He initially is born of a free family. He actually grew up not too far from one Frederick Bailey, aka Frederick Douglass. Okay, and when he hits the age of about 18, he leaves America, goes to Jamaica for a couple years, comes back to Baltimore, and works on a shipping vessel for a couple years. He actually owned a shipping vessel. He was going back and forth between Boston and the Carolinas, selling his wares and transporting people. The state of Maryland passes a law that forbids a Black person from owning a seaworthy vessel. So he's forced to sell it. He ends up going out to Kansas because of he was associated with a man by the name of Charles Reed Anthony. Okay. Daniel Reed Anthony, pardon me. So Daniel Reed Anthony is the older brother of Susan B. Anthony. He says, hey, look, if you would transport my wife and children out here, I think this would be a good place for you to come out to Kansas. There's not much for you back in Baltimore. He's about 25 at the time, free and Black in Baltimore before the Civil War. He said, hey, just come out here, maybe make a living. He goes up there, sets up shop. He ends up establishing a restaurant and rooming house. Okay. And he also had become a Mason in one of his travels in Boston. And he starts up the first lodges in Kansas. Okay. During the Civil War, he organizes the first Kansas Colored Volunteer Regiment, which becomes the 79th United States Colored Troops. Now, y'all saw Glory, which covered the 54th and 55th from Massachusetts. Now, the 79th from Kansas, or the first Colored Volunteers, they were actually the first. They weren't the first Black regiment, but they were the first Black regiment during the Civil War that saw combat. And they saw combat in some of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War. A lot of times when we talk about the Civil War, people are talking about the East and the southeastern region. People talk about Gettysburg, Chancellorsville, going down to Sherman's March to the Sea in Georgia and all those type of things. You don't really hear as much about the West. The West is still being developed. It's a lot of its territories. But when you think about the Battle of Poison Springs, okay, Matthews leads these brothers in the battle. They lost. I want you to be clear. Matthews and his crew, they lost 700 men and won the fight. So if they lost 700 men, how many did they have to take out in order to win the battle?
That's real war right there.
That brother there was not playing any games, and neither were the brothers that was rolling with him. Okay. During this time period, he gets a couple more lodges established out in Kansas, and in June of 1867, he established the most worshipful King Solomon Grand Lodge of Kansas, which is the root of Black Freemasonry in Kansas and in the Wild West, so to speak. At one point in time, that brother was running Black Masonry from as far north as Cheyenne, Wyoming, and as far south as San Antonio, Texas. Okay. Wow. So the story is quite interesting, quite action packed. There's a lot of folks in the book that you might not expect to see in there. But that brother was doing the thing as far as military and organizing is concerned. There were some controversies that happened, and you have to get the book to understand all of that. But yeah, that brother was, a lot of us saw the film The Harder They Fall on Netflix. Well, at the beginning of that movie, they told you, they said, hey, these were real people, but this story is fictional. I'm telling you a story about real people, and it's a real story.
Yeah,
that actually happened.
So I'll be honest. It was great casting or whatever, but it didn't move me, man.
Right.
The movie didn't move me that great. I'm putting the link back in the chat to purchase your book. So in this book, you got some real history, and that's it's invaluable, man. We got to preserve these traditions. Talk to us about how there's no such thing as a white cowboy.
Oh man. So I learned that from one of my mentors, and I think for those of us who are interested, if you're into writing or really into anything, but particularly with writing and scholarship, it's important to have mentorship. It's important to learn from those who've come before you, whether those are people who are living or maybe they're deceased, and you just read their works and listen to their talks or what have you. One of my mentors is Professor R. Burton, who teaches out in Chicago. This is the brother, probably his most well-known book is Black Gun Silver Star, which is the story of Bass Reeves. Okay, he is the expert on Bass Reeves, and in my opinion, he's the expert on Black history in the Wild West. Okay, his most recent book is on Cherokee Bill, which you saw The Harder They Fall. Lakeith Stanfield's character was Cherokee Bill, right? Mm-hmm. So Professor Burton got a book on almost everybody who was in that film, on the real people, okay? And so it's very interesting. But to get to your question, one of the things that Professor Burton argues is that there was no such thing as a black cowboy. I mean, as a white cowboy, because if you understand it, these are professions. Cattle hands and whatnot, that's a profession. White men were known as cow hands. Okay, in some of the old Western films, you'll see that term used. They were cow hands. Black men were cowboys. Think about it. What do they call us outside of that world? Boy. But guess what? The black cowboys were not only more skilled at this profession than whites, because a lot of our ancestors had come from cattle raising areas. We were used to raising cattle in slavery, some of us, right? But they were more numerous than the white cow hands. Think about it. You got there's more pawns on the board than kings, right? You only gonna have one king on your side of the chessboard, but there's more pawns, right? But what happens is over time, cowboys are more numerous, and the terminology becomes more, regularly used. And so that's why you got the Dallas Cowboys today and not the Dallas Cow Hands. So,
it sounds better.
It does sound better, right? The cowboy, right? It does sound better. Exactly. That's where where that terminology comes from. Okay. Wow. So I don't even like referring to them as black cowboys. I just say, hey, they was cowboys. The black is assumed.
There's only one.
There's only one. There's only one.
Brother, you study Africana studies at Harvard. I mean, at Howard University, man.
Yes, sir.
Talk to us, about the importance of what you've learned along your journey of studying there.
Oh man, I think probably the most important thing for a black person when it comes to studying Africana history, African philosophy, African worldview, is really becoming a fuller human being. Okay. A lot of this stuff are things that we are in the process of repairing from the damage that has been done to our people, to our planet, to our culture. It's about becoming a fuller human being for those of us who are of African descent. And for those who are not, I believe that, and I was reflecting on this, I think, yesterday, actually. I think that it's also important for them as well, because what they'll recognize, what they should recognize, is a fuller humanity for themselves, as far as how they're dealing with people of African descent, African culture, how African culture has impacted their lives in a positive way, right? To me, it's about becoming a fuller human being, ultimately. And we can get into historical facts, we can get into a whole lot of different things. But to me, that's one of the most important things, because if we become fuller human beings, black, we use, I don't even like using the term black. We use it, but to be an African is to be a fuller human being, in my opinion. Black is a label. There's a whole lot of things we can talk about with that. I'm not saying I'm not black. I'm saying that we got to think about how we define ourselves. So when we say, and I'll use Freemasonry as an example. I'll be honest with you. I had an interest in Freemasonry, but in my mind, I distinctly thought, I said, well, black people don't really get into this stuff, do we? All this esoteric symbolism and that. I thought I was weird. I thought something was wrong with me. But by having a fuller understanding of myself as an African person, I understood, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, we do get into this type of stuff. Matter of fact, we invented most of this type of stuff. Okay. And then, we get into our own traditions and understanding, like I mentioned, I'm 7 generations in an organization in my family. Had no idea about that at the time.
I was just about to talk about because you're a genealogist as well. So talk about, that research process and finding members in your line that are doing exactly, the same thing you're doing in Freemasonry.
Absolutely. So for me, I always tell people, when it comes to doing your family history, you got to do the same thing that we've always done. Talk to your elders first. You once you know what you know, talk to your elders. I was fortunate enough up until July of last year that I still had a great grandfather that was living, who was also a member of the craft of Freemasonry. Okay. I started interviewing him, my grandfathers, my grandmother, started dealing with other members of my family and whatnot, and doing the cross analysis and looking at my family tree and saying, hey, who was involved in the church? Who was involved? Who went to college? And one day I said, hey, who I wonder if I could find some records about who in my family was in Masonry. And I was able to find that. Shout out to Dr. King Collins, who's the grand historian in Alabama. And I was able to find that information, and I could go back to a set of my great grandparents who were the first Prince Hall Mason and Eastern Star in my family line that I'm aware of. I have a photograph of them. The lodge and the chapter that they started still exist in Alabama. Okay, so we sometimes we like to talk about and say, well, we used to have back in the day. We had no, we still have things. Our ancestors, the question is, are you maintaining it? So to find out that, like, yo, wait a minute, my ancestors established something, institution in the community that still exists. And then when I called down there on the phone and said, hey, this is who I am, I'm doing some research, and somebody said to me, oh, so we must be cousins. Wow, you know what I mean? So
wait a minute.
I got cousins in Alabama right now, still in the same lodge and same chapter that my ancestors started over 100 years ago, over a century ago. I haven't been able to visit them yet, as a Mason, but I plan to.
That's crazy.
I plan to show up and say, hey, look, here I am. You know what I mean? And the funny thing is, I got a cousin, Reverend Erica Williams. She is at Harvard University. Me and her was connected. We got connected because one of my former students is a student of hers now at Harvard, right? And she put us in touch. We figured out we were related. Like, oh wow, she's a sister in the Eastern Star. I said, ain't that something from that same lineage? So me and her was talking about. We was talking about that ancestral connection, and she was like, "Hey, look, we need to go down there. We gotta." I said, "Yeah." So we're making plans right now. We got to do it. So I settled that.
What part of Alabama?
This is going down to Troy, Alabama, which is the same place. Yeah, the same place where John Lewis is from. John Lewis he himself was a Prince Hall Mason. Yeah, one of his brothers is actually married to a cousin of mine, and then for those who saw his funeral, one of his great nephews spoke there, whatever. That was one of my cousins from that same lineage, right? And so I'm saying that to say this: sometimes we think we're reinventing the wheel, but we're not.
We carrying the legacy.
We're carrying the legacy, even sometimes when we don't know we're carrying the legacy. We're carrying the legacy.
Absolutely.
My only thing as a historian is to remind us of what that legacy is, so we don't make the same mistakes that we made already. We don't have to. Some of these discussions and things that we're having, whether it's talking about anti-Masonry, whether it's this so-called battle over what they call critical race theory, all these different things. Some of these, we don't have these fights already as a society and as Black folks. So many things we don't already solve these problems, but we got to go back and read and research and go back and look at some of the speeches, look at some of the things, look at some of the institutions that our ancestors already had, and we'll say, oh, wait a minute, why are we even having that argument? Why are we even talking to these? Why are we even? We did this already, right?
Brother Fitz said y'all could be cousins. He said he think he got a connection.
Hey, it's possible. It's possible. And I look forward to talking to him about that. Again, I don't think anything happens by accident. Not when it comes to this type of stuff. I think that if you're a believer in a higher power, or what have you, we're here for a reason. We're here for a reason. And I think that Freemasonry is one of those institutions. It's a tool that if you are in it and you know how to use it properly, then it can help you to get a better understanding of the reason why you're here in the first place. And I'm very thankful for that.
Absolutely. To close us out, man, I want to make this statement that I often make on this subject. There are so many other organizations that are, Freemason-like. I'll just use that, but none of these organizations get any of the conspiracy crap that we get. It is so interesting, right? Because you got the Elks, you got Golden Dawn, you got the Rosicrucians, you got the OTO, you got the Mo Vipers, you got all of these other, you got the Mechanics, you got
we need to talk about the at some point in time, me and you need to have a conversation. I'm sorry to cut you off. We need to have a conversation about the Rosicrucians, because I'm actually a member of a Rosicrucian lodge here in DC as well. And believe it or not, the same thing that happened in Prince Hall happened to the Rosicrucians.
Yeah,
we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. Yes,
they don't get any blame for global domination, and the reason is because, you know, Freemasonry is the most popular out of these groups. So it's the one everybody knows. But if they, you know, so when people carry on this conspiracy stuff, they're already talking from a point of ignorance. You don't know about these other groups enough to place any blame on them. So, you know, it's lazy research, you know. And when people say, well, you know, they and you know them, ask them who these pronouns are. Who is they? Who is them? Who is he? You know, who are these people? You know, and if they can't give you any definitive answers, you just need to move on, because you know, we've brought the information today. You know, we've brought we gave you articles, we gave you books, we gave you references, we gave you chronology, historical timelines. Demand that from the same people that you take that other weak research from. And that's anything, whether it has to do Africana studies, whether it has to do with you know, Freemasonry, whether it has to do with any subject. Demand the evidence. You know, and that's what it is. So I want to thank you for coming on, brother.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you dropping the bombs that you did, the jewels that you did. Man.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to encourage everybody to check out the Prince Hall Think Tank as well, which is a show that I'm a co-panelist on. We've been going for a couple years now. We are also on YouTube. So
all you
gotta do is punch in.
On there. What's the man's name? His name Antoine.
Brother Antonio Caffey, Brother Dave Gillard, myself, Brother Damian Jack. We had previous panelists, Curtis Black, Preston Collins, and Dr. Ken Collins. But we've had guests from all over the place over the past few years, and we've covered a lot of topics on that show. So if there's something I said that maybe we didn't get as deep into here today as you might like, check out the show. And we may have done a full episode on it already. And, you know, of course, you all have the website, jamesrmorgan.com. Feel free to hit me up. You know, and our brother doesn't know this. However, if anybody in this audience, if you order a copy of the book and you just put a note in there and say that you watched it on this show, a portion of the proceeds will go directly back here to the MossiWarriorClan, because I believe in practicing cooperative economics. The brother gave me an opportunity to come before you all, and I don't believe in just hitting and running. I believe in contributing back. You know, and this is my brother from another mother right here. So I support what you're doing, and I'm pledging right now before the community that whatever, you know, portion of any books purchased from any of your audience members is gonna go right back here to your program.
Man, I appreciate that, man. Appreciations to the highest degree, man. So before we go, one more time, Beautiful Lessons About Kimoyo. Pick up my brother Kofi's book, Spears of the Mossi, Volume 4. Pick that up. What SARS-CoV-2 taught me. Pick that up. I believe this book is coming soon. Yes, we do children's books as well. So this is going to be the coloring book coming this way. Pick up the shirt, New Independent African Academy. Pick up the hoodie, New Independent African Academy, on FamilyConnectApparel.com. And as we leave, we always leave you with Odabo. We out.